fuck me sideways. And there is my disclaimer to imply basically that this live stream is not meant for children. Hashtag COPPA reference. But anyway, sorry for the technical difficulty. For any of y'all who might be tuning in right now or anything like that, if you might have tuned in a little earlier on the channel, I was trying to go live via OBS, but for some reason, it was not working out with me. The connection wasn't working out with me, and I just figured that it was so freaking tiresome and irritating that I just thought, screw it, I'm just going to go with StreamYard instead. So here I am with a standstill blue fire background instead of the actual active moving one. So it's a little bit lame, and I don't have any awesome opening sequence either. But nonetheless, here we are. Let's just get this over with nonetheless, because I have still a schedule to keep up. I'll probably have to talk to Aircraft Sparky or some other fellow YouTuber content creator in order to help give me some tips on using OBS. Again, I seriously do not know what the deal might have been right there. But anyway, so moving on to the serious subject. So I think it might be fair to give a little bit of a look back on the whole Sharpie gate thing, as it is being labeled as the whole thing about if voters in Arizona using Sharpies for their ballots, and there's a whole bunch of back and forth on whether or not that Sharpie ballots are actually being invalidated. And originally, I was just buying in hook, line, sinker into it because some of my more the news sites that I trust more, like USA Today and other ones, were saying that there's no real evidence to suggest that. But at one point in the last episode of Strike Force News, I was given this screen cap in my Discord. This is from AZDems, ArizonaDems.org. Do I need a special pen to mark my ballot? You can barely see it because the screen cap is kind of blurry right here, but it says a standard black or blue ballpoint pen is sufficient. Do not use red ink or permanent marker. This may result in a false read by ballot tabulation machines. So AZDems, from what I can see, as I actually visited their website, are not like an official Arizona government website. They're more of a Arizona Democrats activist group or something like that. Arizona Democratic Party political activist group or campaigning group. I don't know exactly. But so there is a possibility that Arizona Dems, they might be, I guess you can say, dumb or misinformed ultimately, to sort of help also spread the misinformation to other people out there to believe in Sharpie Gate, that Sharpie ballots are being invalidated. But nonetheless, it still strikes of a high eyebrow. It just strikes as odd, because you have, on the one hand, election officials, as according to both USA Today and AP, that official election officials in Arizona are saying that it will not invalidate your ballots. But on the other hand, you have Democrats kind of saying otherwise. And I just got to ask, why would Democrats, a Democrat organization, be saying that if it's not true? I mean, that's not necessarily to say that it definitely is not true, you know, whether or not that ballots, Sharpies get invalidated. But nonetheless, what the heck is going on? Can we not get our information right, people? Is my question. I think it's just a fear technique, says Sent1000. Perhaps. JC Armitage says, press F to pay respects to that last live stream's connection. F. Anyway, hello, Red Feather, who just joined us right now. So, I don't know. I'm not going to just believe fully in Sharpie Gate or have an opinion either way on Sharpie Gate. But nonetheless, knowing of what AZ, or no, I did not mean to pull that up. That is my files. So, just looking at the screen cap here of what was provided by AZDems, or the information provided by the AZDems organization, it still like raises quite a few questions. But I'm not gonna, for right now, I'm just not gonna have much of an opinion either way on it. So we'll have to wait and see, possibly. But I'm not going to make my firm stake. I'm not going to stake my claim fully in the whole Sharpie Gate thing. Although there was this article from WordPress.com that we had read last episode of where that they did provide some other examples of voter fraud going on. As we'll get more into that a little bit later. Well, actually, we already went into that last live stream, so we're not going to be reading the full thing. Nonetheless, Someblackguy is a former Skeptosphere YouTube content creator. He's kind of been one of those people who has really kept his head more on his shoulders as compared to some other people, like Andy Worski, who went completely crazy, no bullshit, who is a freaking idiot, and other folks like that. Sargon of Akkad is getting kind of burnt of the political sphere. Like he's pretty much abandoned his main channel, and I think, I'm not for absolute certain on this, but I think there was talk on one of the other Discord servers that I was in, where that Sargon was possibly given up completely on politics. So it's quite odd. But nonetheless, that guy is one of those skeptosphere, one of those skeptic community members who has been more out of the drama fray, one could say. And I'm subscribed to Derrick Blackman, as is his actual name, and he's revealed it before, so obviously not doxing. But I like Someblackguy's content. Been a bit of a long-time subscriber. But nonetheless, he just made this one video that is rather stupid, talking about the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election. And I just wanted to respond to this episode of Strike Force. And then right after this, we're going to get into talking about Rona deaths and whatnot. Quit again, says Red Feather. I did not know that he ever quit before on politics. I don't know. There have also been many mail carriers arrested for throwing mail, as Red Feather. Right? Indeed. But you'll see what I mean here and of how dumb it is. So let's nothing like the present. Let's just get right into it.
Supreme victory.
So I wanted this video to come out a day ago on the 9th of November because 4 years ago I made a video called President-elect Trump and the Salty Aftermath. And it would be a disservice not to make a follow-up with Biden being president-elect. Now, I know there's some people.
That's fair enough. I mean, you can go ahead and make. I mean, I'm not going to deny that there isn't some salt and some criticism to go towards the right and some of their rhetoric, anyways, of their reaction towards the presidential election. But Derrick Blackman, he's going to be drawing an exact equivalence between the two reactions of the 2016 election and now in the 2020 election. And that's where I have disagreement with Derrick on, that they aren't exactly equivalent. We'll get more into that later.
Tend not to think so, but quite frankly, I think I can break some down to you to kind of show you that it's a little bit silly to think that way. All right, it's a little bit. Now, I also want to say that.
Well, considering the fact the last time that we had an election that was this close was in 2000, and Al Gore versus George Bush, and that election wasn't called until like 37 days, or wasn't officially called until 30 or 37 days after election day. I think that there might be something to be had on what is going on as far as the election goes. LOL, the fact that Blackman is actually Derrick's last name, right? It is kind of ironic.
I did predict that Biden would win, but I wasn't 100% sure. Obviously, it could be. But just from paying half attention.
And I just want to say that I wasn't absolute certain on whether or not that Trump would win. I was guessing Trump for a while, and I'll say right now that I somewhat retract that statement because it's not a clear Trump victory. If Trump ultimately does, if there is ultimately in the courts found to be a whole bunch of a significant enough amount of fraud going on that would have swayed the election towards Biden, and if the fraud did not happen, Biden would have lost. if that is found out and Trump does win, then he ain't going to win by as much of a margin as I would have thought.
I could see.
This video was recommended. Everything's periodically. You know what? I gotta check something. Mike is going through the Rode NT. So... All right, my microphone is being fed into my Rode NT microphone right here, folks, instead of the webcam. So I do not know what exactly might be up with the audio quality. Everything is periodically roboting. This video was recommended to me the other day, but I didn't watch it. I see. JC Armitage says, oh yeah, that was indeed true about the Bush-Gore 2000 election. I was really young at that time, so I didn't quite remember until recently. Yeah. Hello, Moon-Based Radio in the chat right now. Let's go.
The way the winds were blowing. So the video that released on the 3rd, right, on Super Tuesday, that was my prediction. And he pulled it off. Because I was thinking either Trump was going to win by the skin of his teeth or Biden would pull it off. I mean, the mail-in votes, a lot of people, even while the election was happening, even while the votes were counted, a lot of people just didn't understand how many mail-in votes there were. And they also didn't understand that they weren't counted early, which would have helped settle this mess so much quicker. A lot of people were denied, a lot of states, excuse me, they couldn't count them early. So they were very delayed. And a lot of people were saying, these things come out of nowhere. And how come they're all for Biden? It's like, because Trump was saying that stuff's bullshit. So the base wasn't fucking with it. It's pretty simple when you just think about it for 5 seconds. I mean, I always say, hey, there's a lack of critical thinking in this country. We have an epidemic of it. But before we get into all that,
you know what? I don't know if I fully follow Derrick's logic right there. I mean, it's not like every single Trump voter would have said that, this is bullshit, I'm just not going to do it at all, referring to doing their votes via a mail-in ballot as opposed to an in-person vote. I mean, a lot of Trump's base, would have preferred in-person voting as opposed to mail-in ballot. Would have counted a little bit later in the election and vote counting process. But nonetheless, I don't really think that's not exactly evidence that's I don't know. That's not exactly a debunkery of the possibility that there is voter fraud, Derrick.
Want to say that do not despair Trump's supporters, because Biden is Republican light. There's a lot of people are seeing that, the communists are going to take over this and that. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be like, it reminds me of this scene from Drawn Together where all these like homophobes are all afraid that this pro LGBT kid show is everybody gay, and it's going to be like some type of dystopia.
5 years from now, we'll be a gay paradise where all music is dance and all food is low carb and the semen flows like wine. But a small minority of normal people still survives in the sewers beneath the sports arenas.
But I'm here to say,
you know what that kind of reminds me of? Demolition Man. Of where pretty much all the soy-filled, I guess you could say, libtards, notice my fingers right here, folks, live all on the surface with their cushy lives and the sort of frou-frou, plushy, nicey-nice attitudes. And then all the more hardcore, more almost, I guess you'd say, libertarian-esque types lived in the sewage. Now people are saying if they had known Biden was in favor of lockdown, they wouldn't have voted for him. What were they listening to during his speeches, says Red Feather. Yeah, exactly. We'll get more into that a little bit later, as Derrick made this one comment in particular, is particularly stupid, that he said about Biden.
There's not going to be that much of a difference, because if you look at what Biden has stood for over the decades, it's Republican light. I mean, the guy that...
I spoke a little bit too soon, folks. If only I had played the video just a little bit more, you would have known the quote that I thought was absolutely stupid from Derrick. Let's just rewind that just a few seconds.
Still survives in the sewers beneath the sports arenas.
But I'm here to say there's not going to be that much of a difference because if you look at what Biden has stood for over the decade, it's Republican light. I mean, the guy that wrote the crime bill, you know, Kamala Harris, a cop.
That don't mean jack shit. I mean, it might be a little bit ironic because being anti-cop is a little bit more stereotypically left-leaning or Democrat-esque, but to be fair to the Democrats, not all of them are a monolith, an absolute monolith of just passionate anti-cop people. So that's not the strongest evidence of Biden being Republican light. Oh, he chose a cop, basically, to be his running mate. This is stupid. You know what? Derrick got on a whole bunch of people for saying, what am I saying? Derrick just got on the Trump base by saying that there is not a whole bunch of critical thinking going on, but that is exactly what he's doing right here. Not exactly a whole bunch of critical thinking. I mean, he mentioned the crime bill. He mentioned, which I guess is fair enough because crime things, being tougher on crime or whatever, could go off on a limb and say that that might be a little bit more stereotypically Republican-esque. But having a cop for your running mate doesn't mean that at all.
I mean, that's not very progressive. And also Biden voting for all the wars.
Well, not every single Democrat is exactly a progressive now, are they, Derrick?
Very pro-war. That's not a very progressive or very commie thing. He's just Republican.
Well, I don't know. No, I find that a little bit hard to believe. The USSR was in a state of war throughout a good portion of World War II and so forth, trying to expand their borders. I mean, I don't know. I do not know the exact details of how they expanded their lands, but just being a pro-war, I have to press exit out. That is... Let's listen to that a little bit again.
Light. I mean, the guy that wrote the crime bill, Kamala Harris, a cop. I mean, that's not very progressive. And also Biden, all the wars, very pro-war. That's not a very progressive or very commie thing. It's
not inherently a right-leaning or Republican thing either. I mean, as we have seen in recent years, the tables have been turning a little bit. Like, yeah, I guess you could old guard boomer Republican voting base that is just passionately for the Iraq war, or still looks back on the Iraq war and thinks, oh, the good old days, the Iraq war was a good thing and all the other wars and whatnot. But being anti-war in general is becoming a more and more popular position to hold, or at least generally anti-war, or being a little bit less interventionist with your foreign policy in general. So that's not a strong evidence of him being Republican light. Now, I think he's pretty much done with his laundry list, quote unquote, of positions that he thinks are evidence of Joe Biden being Republican light.
Republican light. He doesn't care about what the liberals want. Overwhelmingly, they want universal health care. And he said he wouldn't even look at it. If that would make it to his desk, he would.
Oh, that's bullshit. I mean, for universal, okay. We have another guest with us, OSB. I noticed that your face is being shown because I'm streaming via StreamYard instead of OBS right now.
Oh, you just watching Someblackguy?
Yeah, the video is very bad. And so I just
seen the video.
Oh, well, there's still a whole lot more video to go, but let me just rewind this again and let me see if I can, of what your take is on all this. And then we'll both commentate on what he has to say about Joe Biden supposedly being Republican
I'm here to
light.
say there's not going to be that much of a difference because if you look at what Biden has stood for over the decades, it's Republican light. I mean, the guy that wrote the crime bill, Kamala Harris, a cop. I mean, that's not very progressive. And also Biden voting for all the wars, very pro-war. That's not a very progressive or very commie thing. He's just Republican light. You know, he doesn't care about what the liberals want. Overwhelmingly, they want universal health.
What do you have to say about all that, Espy?
Come on, bro. I'm doing homework. I don't need to lose brain cells now. Come on. Well, here's the thing. What they stood for, I understand there oftentimes is a gap between what politicians promise and what they stand for. Here's the problem. Another thing is that politicians are under pressure to, how should we say, get reelected. So they're going to have to do some of this stuff, even if they don't. I mean, Kamala Harris has said many times that she has definitely shown herself to be far left, even though back in the 90s she was a pretty hard prosecutor. You know, I'd say a corrupt one at that. And Joe Biden was, was pretty much a because they supported the crime bill. The crime bill was a thing that was pretty much just universally supported at that time in history. So it doesn't really say anything about their actual political beliefs, because political beliefs change. Just because back in the 90s they were would be considered moderate Democrats doesn't mean their minds haven't been changed by or they haven't been pressured into changing by the changing ideologies of the Democratic Party. So, yeah, I don't think, this guy, Someblackguy, he's a good musician, but some of his political takes are, this one's particularly shitty.
Yep. And might I say, if we're going to go, you do raise a fair point. Like, if we're to go off the logic of judging people's current positions off of what they've done in the 90s, whether or not they might have changed positions, that would mean that Trump right now is Democrat-like. Well, actually, I would say that even now, Trump is more close to being a Democrat-like than Joe Biden is to being Republican-like. But yeah, if we're to go by that logic, then does that mean that Derrick Blackman thinks that Trump is Democrat-like? I mean, he doesn't say that at any point in this video, but I'm just wondering if that's something that he would actually unironically say in one of his future videos. But listen to this one little here.
He doesn't care about what the liberals want. Overwhelmingly, they want universal health care. And he said he wouldn't even look at it. That wouldn't even make it to his desk. He would.
All right, that's bullshit.
They're gonna bully him into doing that. They're gonna bully Biden, and also the guy's senile. So, and Kamala Harris will sign if she becomes the president, because Biden's on his way out. He could die tomorrow. Heck.
Possibly, but what I was going to say to that is, did Derrick Blackman not watch any of the debates that gone on during the presidential campaign? I mean, Biden did not say that he would not consider universal care. He said that he would not consider, I don't know, he seemed kind of fickle on it more overall, but he seemed overall against Medicare for all. He was for a public option, though, which kind of implies that there would be some private plans. Like, Biden did not say that he would get rid of all private plans in the same way that Bernie did, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's anti-universal health care. Like, there are other methods of going about universal health care that Democrats or centrists or center leftists might go about and trying to provide.
He's essentially arguing for
wait. Sorry. Outside of going for a Medicare for all, nationalize the entire industry, healthcare, single payer healthcare plan. So it's just bullshit. And plus all the other policies that we'll get into a little bit later. What were you saying, SB?
I was going to say, so what you're saying is he was essentially arguing for a sort of quasi-European model, a lot maybe like Switzerland, where there is a public option, but there's also you also have the ability of buying private care, which, by the way, even in European countries, the private one is better. So we yeah, it's so I could understand why somebody would want that. I mean, I do think it's better than forcing everybody to go on single payer, because that would just be a disaster. But yeah, all right, keep going. Let's keep going.
Right. Red Feather. Okay. Approve this chat comment. Maybe I should like give some more wrenches because I don't have any wrenches at all popping up in the live chat. But
No wrenches.
Red Feathers said, where is it? Fuck. So it said something. And voted for Zero Wars is what Red Feather said a little bit earlier. Yeah, so it kind of goes along with my. Does that mean that? Excuse me, is Democrat like Derrick? But yeah, let's move on a little bit more.
Some black guy's making me want to say the gamer word.
Oh, jeez, no.
I'm joking. I'm joking. All right, let's.
Some black guy, he might be drinking a little bit too much of the retard juice right here, but let's not go that far.
I know.
Be mean to him.
I won't be mean to the guy. I was doing this.
A progressive, super ultra woke candidate, even though they're saying stuff like that for the rhetoric to try to get some of those progressive supporters, the ones that really wanted Bernie Sanders.
He said that he would reinstitute the lockdowns and even be harsher in the area of the COVID-19 lockdowns than Trump has. Like, do a national mask mandate. I mean, Trump, I do not fully approve of his handling of the pandemic at all, but at least he did not do a national, on the federal level, mask mandate for the entire country. He just let that part be left up to the states. Biden, he didn't even say leave it up to the states. He said that he wants a federally mandated mask mandate, along with giving assistance to small businesses.
Wouldn't that be largely unconstitutional? Like,
it would, but when has the Constitution fully stopped any president?
Well, Styx Hexenhammer brought up that if a state refuses to go along with quarantine, Biden will just threaten to take away their infrastructure funding, and that'll cause them to go along with it, force them to go along with it.
Yeah, that's my concern. I mean, I wasn't like looking at that issue. You know, him cutting off funding or any sort of support from to the states in the area of COVID-19. But I was thinking like on the handling of the riots. Like, President Trump has not been the one handling the riots, except for whenever he got the federal police involved in Portland. But aside from that, it's been mostly local state governments that have been handling and trying to avoid riots whenever the people would get violent over the summer. And it just got me concerned that if Biden ultimately did become president, would he start taking these different state and local governments into court or other sort of federal move in order to hurt them, be it directly or indirectly? Just because, you went too far with trying to suppress and stop these riots. And note that I'm saying riots, not the peaceful protests. I'm all for the peaceful protests being left alone, but not the riots. I mean, what is Biden going to do about the riots because he against the in regards to the riots because he XYZ riot to be, I don't know, in some way in his twisted mind to be a peaceful protest. In the same way that one CNN report. You see, it's a mostly peaceful protest, even though I got a fire going on behind me. Actually, I do have a fire on behind me right now.
But if you think that shit's gonna happen, everything's gonna change like crazy, then you're not fucking paying attention. You're not.
Hey, I gotta go. I just wanted to come in just to say something real fast. It's because I got to do some homework. I just wanted to say hi.
Thanks. It was nice to chat for you very shortly, SB.
Sorry about this, but I just wanted to come in and say hi.
No, it's good. Talk to you later. But anyway, let's rewind that a little bit because this is ridiculous.
That is not a progressive, super ultra woke candidate, even though they're saying stuff like that for the rhetoric to try to get some of those progressive supporters, the ones that really want Bernie Sanders. If you think that shit's gonna happen, everything's gonna change like crazy, then you're not fucking paying attention. You're not.
Fuck you, you condescending asshole. We have been paying attention. In fact, I would say that me and my audience in particular have been paying more attention to what Biden's positions are than you have. So don't give me that bullshit. Have you even seen Biden's platform that he was offering up on his campaign website as far as gun rights go? He is wanting to reinstitute basically the assault weapons ban to ban the further production and sale, whatnot, of AR-15s. And even tried to do a buyback program or some kind of watered down version of it. So, I mean, Trump hasn't been very good on guns. He said that he is willing to compromise on the assault weapons ban, but he hasn't actually done a passionate advocacy for it, whereas Biden has. He is quite a few steps up from Trump when it comes to these issues. Biden, he wants the $15 minimum wage nationally. Trump said, at least to his credit, leave it up to the states. Even though I think even on the state level, state governments should not be raising their minimum wages. But that aside, and again, lockdowns. God. Heavier handling of the lockdowns, doing a further crackdown on trying to lock down the country in order to, quote unquote, fight the pandemic.
Or you're listening to people that are lying to you.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Just no. I already said my response into how this is all bullshit right here. I'm not going to repeat myself. Just fuck you, dude.
That's why a lot of you are probably surprised. You thought Trump was going to destroy Biden because you're listening to people that were saying so.
Okay, that part is fair enough. I mean, all the people who are like buying into hook, line, and sinker, and also the rhetoric of all these right-wing, talk shows that were thinking, yeah, definitely, Trump is going to win. There's going to be a Trump landslide come to the 2020 presidential election. That's a fair point. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily lying to their audiences. They're just being overly optimistic and selling off their over optimism to their audiences. I won't say that it's intentional misinformation. The claim that the people are lying to them as far as the positions of Biden, that's bullshit. That is outright crap, Derrick. Like, I don't even hate Derrick. In fact, I still recall that, like, some older video of some black guys, he said that back in 2012, I think it was, that he had actually supported Ron Paul for president. It might have been either 2012 or 2008. I can't remember which one exactly. But back in the day, he was a Ron Paul supporter. Some black guy was a Ron Paul supporter. So he does have a few right-wing beliefs. But here on the internet with his content creation, his YouTube persona, he seems to be taking this overly centrist-y type of personality and view on politics. It just is outright crap. And we'll get more into how his centrist lens is blinding him later.
But if you were paying half attention like me that weren't listening to people that have agendas, you would know that, it's going to be very close. I mean, it's
for the record, I did not think that I did not think that it was going to be a landslide either way, really. I know Ron Paul ran for president in 2012. Don't know if he did in 2008 or not. He did, actually. In fact, there are some clips of where Ron Paul was confronting Rudy Giuliani on the debate stage. So, yeah. He made a stab at the Republican primaries of 2008 and 2012 both times.
Crazy. It's like, this is the time to reevaluate the people that you listen to and realize, wait, a lot of people were so fucking wrong.
Well, then in that case, that means that maybe people should like reconsider whether or not they view the Young Turks. The entire Young Turk fan base should, like, I don't know, maybe even stop listening to them entirely by that logic, just because they were wrong about the presidential prediction.
I need to figure out what else they're wrong about. I think that's really important, guys. But now we got a lot of salt.
Apparently, centrism is the safe way to maintain your credibility, y'all. God. But no. I'll address that later. Let's go.
It's like in the last election. There's a lot of salt. A lot of it's piled up. You know, at first I was a little bit like concerned, thinking that, I don't think the conservatives are going to freak out as much as those.
And they didn't. I mean, where are the riots? Where are the right-wing riots over the fact that Joe Biden is being announced as the president-elect by the mainstream media? Where are the riots, Derrick? I mean, Okay, I'm just going to say it right now. This is where that his centrist lens is blinding him. I mean, you can criticize the right's reaction and the Republican voting base and all the Republican talking heads and so forth. You can criticize them all you want about their reaction to this election, but even then, they are still not exactly the freaking same as the way that the left reacted back in 2016. There were huge protests. I still remember, and even riots for that matter. Definitely on Inauguration Day back in 2017, from people who hated Trump. Where are the riots? Where are the massive protests this go round, Derrick? I mean, the most that you have is that one guy like photobombing the one news press conference saying the Biden crime family stole this election. That, I mean, as we'll show a little bit later here, as we'll see a little bit later here. I mean, criticize the Republicans all you want, the right all you want, but they did not react near as bad as the left did this go around. I mean, unless you're going to say that claims of voter fraud is just as bad as rioting and burning shit down. I mean, not saying that that's what Derrick thinks exactly, but it's absolute bullshit if anybody actually thinks that. Like, I'm just going to say it right now. He's being too much of a freaking fence-shitting centrist right here between these two videos, between these two election cycles. Derrick is, I mean, I personally have no problem with centrists and people want to take a centristy view. Like, I consistently listen to PSA Sitch, for example, one of the bulwarks, modern day anyways, of internet centrism. I don't got a problem with centrists overall. But if you're going to act like centrism is an absolute virtue that you must attain at all time, you're going to get blinded on how to view both sides of the political aisle. I mean, sides are not exactly the same. They might be bad in their own ways, but that does not mean inherently that they are both equally bad in every single asset or facet or whatever. It's just, get your head out of your ass, Derrick. Come on.
He did. I mean, they're freaking out in their own way because they're so convinced that there's voter fraud, even though for some reason they don't have any problem with the results of the House and Senate, even though they're on the same fucking ballot. They're on the same ballot, and I'm not hearing a peep about, oh, Republicans still got the Senate. Oh, we got a few extra seats in the House. No problem with that. But but there's problems with just...
Where are the claims of voter fraud in those areas, Derrick? I mean, show me the evidence. I mean, there was this one black woman candidate or whatever in which they made a claim of voter fraud. I guess that's one example. I don't remember what the race was exactly. Maybe I should actually read into that story. But there was some Congress or some woman that was running for Congress, a position of Congress, and that is becoming one story of voter fraud, of election fraud, whatever, that had been making the rounds a little bit in the same way as Trump, and people are making a whole lot of parallels between that story and this one. And I think she ran as a Democrat. That might be one story. But aside from that, Derrick, where's your evidence? I mean, you cannot just make an exact equivalence. The reason why that people are not claiming, the reason why that the Republican voting base is not saying that there is voting fraud going on with House or Senate elections is because they're not seeing the voting fraud evidence within the House and Senate elections. You got to provide it yourself. You got to provide it yourself, Derrick, if that is an issue that you're concerned about. Or somebody for that matter.
Trump. That's the only problem. It's fucking silly. Now, before we get into...
Okay, many ballots were also only marked Biden and no others. Wait, I'm still waiting for an explanation as to how Biden got hundreds of thousands of votes in the middle of the night, says Red Feather. To argue devil's advocate, Red Feather, I think some of that might be explained by the mail-in ballot and how that the majority of mail-in ballots were going for Trump. So I don't know. And by the way, I just want to say all those articles that you provided in Discord, in the Strikeforce News channel on Discord, they weren't exactly, at least going by the titles alone, weren't exactly very strong evidence of mass amounts of voting fraud going on. But if you want to provide a piece of evidence of voting fraud going on, Red Feather, and further, by all means, go posting the articles right there in Strikeforce News, and everyone else for that matter. If you have any articles that you want to present as far as voting fraud goes, go ahead and do it in the Strikeforce News Discord or channel on my Discord server.
Some of the crazies, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of the wacky stuff that has gone on. One of the best things about this is the people that are complaining about the media, the mainstream media. They're saying, oh, how are you guys calling it this early? How are you saying Biden's the projected winner? How is he president-elect? It's not over. I mean, the media doesn't control this. It's not over just because the media says this. And I've always thought that was funny, seeing that for the past few days, because I'm like, how come they didn't have a problem when the media did the exact same thing for Trump? When they said Trump won the night and the day after, how come there was no problem when that happened?
Well, where are the claims of voting fraud that went back in 2016? I mean, there have been no claims at all in 2016 of actual voting fraud. I mean, yeah, there was a whole Russian scandal that was claimed by the left as far as Donald Trump's election goes. But where are the claims of voting fraud? I mean, if anything, the claims of voter fraud were coming from the right. Even though that in 2016 Trump ultimately won, there's still claims by the right, by Donald Trump more specifically, actually, that there was voting fraud going on. Now, that's not to say that I believe it. Like, I don't see that there is any significant evidence, absolute significant evidence to say that illegal immigrants were definitely voting in the 2016 general presidential election, like 2 million or just millions in general. But nonetheless, there weren't any claims by the left or anyone for that matter of voting fraud going on that is the only reason as to why that Trump won back in 2016. I mean, there were riots that went on, but all the same, that's probably the biggest reason that I would say as to why that people were safely saying that Trump had won back in 2016. Like, yeah, it was close. The election was close. Trump only won by pretty much 3 key states, that being Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, although he might have been able to win the election still without 1 or 2 of those 3 states. I mean, because he had won Arizona back in 2016 as well, and Georgia, and won North Carolina by a safer margin than he did this go around. But all the same, those are the 3 states, and he had only won by, I think, about 50,000 accumulative votes between the 3 states. Like, as far as the differences between him and Clinton back in 2016 in those 3 states, he only won by about 50,000 point vote difference between those 3 states combined. But the combined differences of those 3 states. And it was close. I will grant you. If there was actual evidence or suspicion to say that there was definitely voter fraud going on for Trump's sake, well then, yeah, you would have a point, Derrick. As far as I know, there weren't any of those claims, much less any evidence being asserted towards that. Just Russian meddling was all.
The Washington Post, Donald Trump wins the presidency and stunning upset over Clinton.
Okay. Here's the thing. Here's the difference, though. The mainstream media, generally speaking, aside from maybe Fox News, is more Democrat establishment. So, of course, they are going to, because they feel comfortable with it, claim that Biden was the winner on the first or second day after Election Day. Washington Post is more heavily left-leaning than a whole lot of mainstream media outlets out there, news outlets over the internet. And even they gone claiming and just passing on the victory to Donald Trump back in 2016. And by the way, this is November 9th. So this was not like the day or second day after Election Day. It was pretty much at the same time that people are now claiming that Biden is the president-elect in 2020.
November 9th, 2016.
My internet took a poo, but I'm back. It might also be, I don't know, possibly also be my own internet connections. Who knows, Red Feather. There are 234 pages of affidavits of people ready to attest to vote tampering, says Red Feather. Maybe I'll look into that. Let me actually copy that bit of text from your chat comment there and enter it into Google for a search for later. All right. The Democrats could have gone the litigation route, but they chose to concede. Right. I mean, maybe this go around Republicans okay. Let me put it this way. Maybe in 2016, the losers did not find absolutely, or the announced losers. Maybe announced losers back in 2016 did not find any voter fraud evidence at all. And maybe in 2020, they did actually find voter fraud evidence. You cannot just go ahead and make these blind equivalations when there is no equivalency between both sides, Derrick. Again, centrism in of itself is not a virtue.
16. From the New York Times, Donald Trump is elected president.
Another left-wing news outlet making the claim for the right that that Donald Trump had won in 2016. Not equivalent.
And stunning repudiation of the establishment. How about some CNN? Breaking, Donald Trump will win the White House, making him the 45th U.S. president, CNN projects. And that's the key word, ladies and gentlemen, projects, because there's a lot of people saying, you see how the media is saying projects? You see how they're using that keyword right there? Yes, it is a keyword that has been used before. There's no conspiracy here. You just didn't give a fuck because your guy won 4 years ago. Now that he didn't win, you're crying and you're trying to find every little tidbit. Like, no, it's not over, I swear. And it's like, guys, stop acting like Charlie from Sunny. And
I can't believe that he is being this dismissive of voter fraud. Let me just go back very briefly. This is the main reason as to why that I pulled back up this WordPress article right here that I'd already read back on the last episode of Strikeforce News. To go back and look at these voter fraud evidences right here. In Fairfax County, a clerical error caused Biden votes to be inflated by roughly 100,000. So, I mean, that's Virginia, though. I mean, Biden, last I know, he had won by safely more than 100,000 votes in Virginia, at least. I mean, that's granted. I mean, let me put a little annotation, a little bit of a disclaimer as far as this voter fraud goes. I don't know about other right-wing talking heads and pundits and whatnot, but I personally have never said definitely that there was enough voter fraud to go on that it would have caused that if that voter fraud did not exist, that Biden would have. I'm not saying that at all. Whereas other people might be saying that Biden would have lost without the voter fraud, but I'm not saying that personally. I'm just saying that there is voter fraud going on nonetheless. We'll have to correct it. Even if Biden ultimately becomes the winner, even if the voter fraud is all solved and resolved, even if all the voter fraud is resolved and Biden ultimately becomes the winner by the end of all of it, yeah, it still needs to be corrected nonetheless to withhold the integrity of our elections, to at least somewhat restore the integrity of our elections. Antrim County was essentially reported as going to Biden. This was so implausible that votes were recounted and it actually went to Trump. The initial miscount was due to human error. This is like in Michigan. I think MI is Michigan. Democrat absentee votes in Oakland County were counted twice. Once correct, the result of the local election flipped for the Republican. So that's a piece of evidence of voter fraud actually being corrected. I mean, good for that, but nonetheless. So no Ben Sharpie heroes, says Mr. Merchant. Well, I like I said a little earlier on this live stream, I'm not so sure if I have an opinion either way on the Sharpies definitely invalidating votes in Arizona. Based on sworn testimony, it is alleged that ballots in Maricopa County featuring overvoting were invalidated rather than fixed. I wonder of what. Oh. Trump campaign files lawsuit in Arizona alleging Maricopa County rejected ballots by in-person voters. It's a Fox News article, so I don't know about that, but yeah. So I don't know about that sourcing by this WordPress article right here. Nonetheless, I mean, there is a lot of eyebrows raised and a lot of holes as far as the election process goes this go around, Derrick, and you're just being fucking blind to it. I mean, if it's not proven beyond the shadow of a doubt voting fraud going on, it's still pretty questionable stuff going on. And you're just being a way too dismissive of it, bud.
In the salty aftermath video I made about Donald Trump being the president-elect, there was a lot of people saying Donald Trump is not my president. I mean, immediately. And you're seeing the same thing happen with Joe Biden. Now, this one, I didn't really see it. I just kind of thought that there would be more self-awareness. I really did. I thought like people would be like, I will not say that. I don't want to be like them. I don't want them to make fun of me like the.
Read the fraud allegations. Team Trump releases items from sworn affidavit. I'll have to take a look at it, Red Feather, but I don't know. It seems to be a little bit of a question. Just on the surface, it seems to be a little bit of a questionable source, but I'll have to remember to look into that, Red Feather. I'll probably pre-read it and present it in the next episode of Strike Force. But for right now, I got a video to respond to.
The way that they made fun of the progressive ideologues, but they just couldn't help themselves. They're all like, oh, not my president. Now, remember that one girl that was screaming? I think she was screaming from the inauguration, if I remember correctly.
Donald J. Trump is now president of the United States.
So a lot of people were taking that meme and repurposing it. You know, I thought some of them were actually pretty funny when they're not only putting the MAGA hat, adding extra stuff. And I thought that was actually pretty funny. Now, a lot of people were saying, how sad is it that they have to take this that's from their side and repurpose it because nobody else is freaking out? No, that's not even true. It's just funny. They're doing it because it's funny. They know that chick was silly, and now they're just using it, and they think it's funny because a lot of you are acting like that. And if you need people, there are people out there. You know, you had people crying, and you had this good old boy, the barbecue.
I don't know if I noticed this beforehand, but I just now noticed the laser eyes right there of this guy.
Bacon Freedom or whatever the fuck that was freaking out.
As I mentioned, we are not prepared to give that.
The Biden crime family steals the election. The media is covering up. The Biden crime family steals this election. The media is covering it up. The Biden crime family steals this election. The media is covering up. We want our freedom for the world. Give us our freedom, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's covering up this election. He's stealing it.
Where were we? What was the last question?
Like, I love that.
Okay, I'm just going to say that, I mean, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. I admit, I wish that guy would have acted with a little bit more dignity in what he was saying and how he was reacting right there. But overall, that guy was at least being a little bit more substantive than the one girl just screaming, "No!" And also, again, that's not a riot right there. It's not a violent anything, really. He's just shouting into a camera, or bombing a news press conference in order to shout at them his message, you know? It's not equivalent to the extreme examples of what the left was doing exactly. Not gonna lie, that guy was pretty cringe. Well, you're not wrong, JC. You're not wrong.
It wouldn't be nearly as great if he wasn't wearing that ensemble. Like, what if he was in a suit? I'd be like, okay, what the hell is that? Is that a provocateur? What's going on here? Is this COINTELPRO?
A lack of self-control is cringe, says Myth Cuttlefish. Yeah, it really is. You know who else lifted their eyebrows? Ben with his caterpillar-like eyebrows, says Mr. Merchant. Shit. Red Feather says, I actually kind of felt like that person come November 4th. LOL, not gonna lie. Well, okay, I'm sure that we all have some family members. I mean, if nothing else, I wanted Trump to win just so that people more align with my side of the aisle. Like, as you all know, I've never been a loyal Trumper. a loyal Trumpist or whatever, whereas some of my family has been more Trump supporting of Trump than me, and way too Trump supporting in general for me to agree with them 100%. But at least within their supporting of Trump, there's at least still a baseline for me to get along with them in regards of talking about our similar political beliefs. And not to mention, I have more Trump supporters than Democrat supporters of any variety. If nothing else, I at least wanted Trump to win so that I did not have to see my own so I do not have to see a higher percentage of my own family members freak out over the election results and be all depressed and sad and angry and all that crap.
People freaking out, and praying and stuff, like, God, you gotta save us because Trump and God. I'm like, okay, bro. You had some people.
Yeah, again, not near as bad as the loud protests that were blocking the streets and the riots as well.
Speaking in tongues, man. One thing
Okay. Sorry, I'm still trying to recover from my cringe. I'm not going to lie. I've been a lifelong Christian, and I have before heard people speak in tongues and whatnot and make their own fully made up mumbo jumbo rambly language for whenever they pray. I always thought that was cringe. But yeah. I'll agree with Derrick, just plain and simple, that people speaking in tongues in their prayer is pretty freaking cringy. Whenever I pray, I try to be as precise as possible. Well, Someblackguy is an atheist. Well, yeah, I guess there is that lens that he was looking through. But nonetheless, even me as a Christian, I can say that it's pretty cringe.
of seeing was the fraud of the graph. It was the fraud. It's like if you saw there was that infamous picture. I'm sure all of you guys have seen it, where they took that graph and then they turned it into an F and then it was like, oh, fraud. This is clearly fraud. How come this can happen? How could this happen at all? And
I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt. He's going to go on a point about how that people say that the huge ass spike upward was evidence or proof, rather, or whatever, that Biden had definitely won. I'm going to say that there's always a portion of my mind that thought in the back of, that thought, yeah, it's not exactly evidence that there was definitely fraud went on. I mean, the other explanation that could be for it is that it was just the mail-in ballots that, I don't know, some 70, 80% of it was, of the mail-in ballots was going for Biden. Not proof, just odd, says Red Feather. Yeah, exactly.
This is the way that my mind works. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if this happened in any other states.
Okay. For one thing, that's okay. Okay, that I think that's Iowa right there. Right there, that is not exactly that is not a huge spike at all for either side, really. Well, it's a spike for both sides at the same time, actually. Huge evidence. It's a corresponding parallel type of spike. And this, again, in Ohio, that's a bit of a parallel too, as far as the spike goes. Right here, a bit of a parallel too. In Kansas, anyways. 2 spikes, actually, in Kansas. So it ain't exactly equivalent. Whereas with that earlier...
Interesting. I wonder if this happened in any other states.
I mean, look at that graph right there. There's a spike on only one side. Whereas with these ones, you're seeing a spike not for just one side. There's like for both sides that is running parallel with one another. So I'm not seeing this as equivalent, Derrick. So shut up.
So many prominent conservative.
If there is a spike on only one side, then it raises the question: is there fraud going on? But if there's a spike for both sides, a rather fairly parallel corresponding spike with both sides, then it's evidence of the system working in plane with itself, working plainly within itself.
I think you're screaming fraud, and I'm just like, what is going on here?
Sent1 1000 says, Mr. Strawman, LOL. What's a strawman you trying to claim? From either Derrick or me? Just want to clarify on that, Sent1.
Why is there only fraud now? And you see a lot of conservative.
No. A lot of people have been claiming fraud. A lot of people on the right have been claiming that there have been fraud for a long time. And do you have amnesia, Derrick? Like Trump himself, I don't think there's as many right-wingers that were at least vocalizing the claims of fraud. They might have thought it in the back of their mind, but they were not vocalizing it because they thought that it was a non-issue to be going on about night because, you know, Trump had won the election anyways, so it was a moot point to go on. But Trump himself in particular made the claim that there was fraud. Well, I guess I don't know if you would technically say that an illegal immigrant being able to vote is technically voter fraud, but nonetheless, it's election interference. We'll just call it voter fraud for right now anyways. There was claims of voter fraud back in 2016. Trump claimed that 2 million illegals had voted. In 2012 and 2008, I remember even now the claims of Acorn activists. It was literally a group that was named Acorn. I can't even remember the exact details of it, and for all I know, the claims might be bullcrap in hindsight. I would have to go back and look at them more specifically, but nonetheless, there was claims of fraud going on all the way back to at least 2008 or at least 2012 to nowadays. People are not just now claiming fraud, Derrick. Oh, you're freaking older than me. You should be remembering this shit better than me.
That were saying, hey, how come the liberals are ignoring all of this stuff? You know, you guys were pushing Russiagate, but now you're ignoring all this stuff. What's going on here? Y'all are being hypocrites. And it's like, yo, you have to look in the mirror. How come you didn't take any of that Russiagate stuff seriously?
Because it was debunked. Or at least, yeah, there was no significant evidence to say that Russia had interfered in the election count or anything like that. I remember that, I can't remember the exact details because it's such an old subject, is a tired old subject that the left has eventually kind of given up on. But nonetheless, I still remember that back in the day, I'm not even, wasn't even that long ago. It's probably like a little less than 2 or 3 years. But nonetheless, TYT had made the claim that there was botting going on, that there were Russian bots that were creating votes for Trump within the 2016 election. There was no hard proof of that. And Steele dossier, I think that was another facet of the Russiagate stuff. Oh, here's the big one, the Mueller probe. Robert Mueller is no pro-Trump guy. Robert Mueller taken over, okay, I don't think he was the head of the FBI, but he was one of the FBI guys running the Russiagate investigation as far as there being election interference that would have got Trump victory in 2016. Even he did not find any evidence of there being like severe tampering of the vote by Russia. That's the reason why that we are not taking into consideration Russia. You dumbass. Myth Cuttlefish says, yeah, I found out I'm older than Sinatra says in my mind. How old are you, Zach? I think I've already told you before my age, Myth Cuttlefish, but I'm 25 now, about to become 26. Or maybe it was actually Red Feather that I said my age. I can't remember. Mueller, that was a funny moment in history, right? Red Feather says, so by his logic, Trump paid for all these Biden votes just so he could claim fraud. Well, I don't think that was a Derrick's point, to be fair, Red Feather. But nonetheless, the reason why the right did not... Oh, God. This is stupid. It was debunked bullshit. That was why that nobody was considering Russiagate. Why no one on the right was considering Russiagate.
How come if you thought you wanted a fair and balanced democratic process, you would be like, we need to look into this. Maybe there is some fraud going on. Maybe there's
It was looked into by the FBI. They found nothing.
something insane going on and we need to look into it. No, you guys all laughed it off and said they're all crazy. Now they're doing the same thing to you. And keep in mind, man, keep in mind, this is nothing new from Trump. Because, you know, Trump was saying, oh, all these votes are popping out of nowhere and stuff. He said the same fucking thing 4 years ago. But
okay, so he does admit. He admits now that there were claims of voter fraud going on. What does he want here? I'm confused as to what Derrick's point is. Like earlier, he was saying, why are you guys just now claiming voter fraud? And then later, he admits that the right was claiming voter fraud 4 years ago. This is Derrick. You kind of contradicted yourself.
then it was like, no, that's not happening. None of y'all gave a shit because your guy won, though. And that's the biggest thing right here.
They did give a shit. They just did not give as big a shit because it was overall a moot point.
Your guy won that time. So you didn't care about any other stuff that was being said. You didn't care about the CNNs or the whatnot projecting Trump to be president-elect. You didn't care about the claims of voter fraud then because your guy won. And now
they didn't care enough because it would have been a waste of political capital and resources ultimately. So, and it would have been a moot point because they want. Well, there's a little bit of a point. He's saying that the reason why they didn't care because he had won. Well, not to say that they didn't care. They just did not care enough because there's a moot point because he had won anyway. I mean, God, this is stupid.
now that's what the liberals are doing. I don't know why you're bitching about them doing what y'all did before. Come on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have so much other content.
Well, they did not claim voter. Well, okay. Never mind. When's your birthday, says Cat Chat. This ain't a big piece of a big reveal right here because on my secondary channel, I did like a birthday stream. December 25th. Or no, excuse me. December 19th is my birthday. Excuse me.
That I could sift through. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to make a Twitter trash just so I can cover some of.
Jason Armitage in the chat says, Stein cared back in 2016 and it revealed nothing, or at least not enough to swing an election. Yeah, I'd run across that article. Good point, JC. I hadn't read fully the article that was provided by Red Feather on my Discord server, but yeah, fair enough.
The other stuff because there's just not enough time. I have a lot of juicy videos of people freaking out, which is lovely, but I'm going to save it because I need more time. I want to focus on Trump now because Trump, which I guess a lot of people aren't surprised, and I can't say I'm not surprised either, but he's acting like the biggest baby ever. You know, going to be refusing to concede, which, keep in mind, concession is a tradition. When everything's all said and done, even if it makes it all the way to Supreme Courts and it's like, nope, everything's legit. Sorry. Just because Trump doesn't concede doesn't mean he's going to be out of the fucking office.
If he can be, okay, if Trump himself can be proven beyond a shadow of doubt by his own conservative nominated Supreme Court that there is no voter fraud and he still doesn't concede, well, then fair enough. He's being a big baby. But until that moment, I don't know. I'm just going to have to agree to disagree with you, Derrick, on whether or not he's technically being a baby. Like, yeah, there's probably a few tweets that you can point out that in which he is being rather immature. But on the overall narrative of it, I don't think he is ultimately being that big of a baby because there is, again, voter fraud this go around.
It's just a tradition. It's just being a man, or even Hillary Clinton being a woman, being a grown-up.
I just want to point this out. Apparently, it aside from Sent 1000, it's an all-female live chat right now. Hello, girls and dude.
And just conceding that you fucking lost. So that's already kind of really annoying. And the fact that he's peddling voter fraud from the very get-go, where he was trying to stop the mail-in votes from the get-go, all of this stuff, knowing that his base doesn't give a fuck about that stuff largely. It's a lot of dirty tactics. And he's being just really pitiful. And we're going to look at some of his most pitiful tweets. We are up big, but they are trying to steal the election. We will never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed. Yet nobody was casting votes after they were closed. They were counting them just like every other election.
Okay, he was definitely being a dumbass right there, but is it technically being... I don't know. I don't care.
They're not finished counting tens of millions of votes the same fucking day. And since there was an excess of mail-in votes, since there was way more than any other time because of the pandemic, it took much longer because they didn't have the opportunity to put them before. It would be nice if they did. But there were things in place.
The Republican Party is the reason it's taken so long to count votes in Pennsylvania. Trump campaign asks court to block early vote counting in Nevada. What are your... God. Instagram, Twitter, merch, subscribe, star, Patreon, PayPal, merch, Streamlabs, second channel, Twitch, Facebook, email. What the fuck, Derrick? Come on. Why don't you cite your claims right here? Why don't you put the citations in the description box, for crying out loud? These are just... oh, God. Never mind. It would have been helpful if you actually cited the articles themselves instead of just the titles themselves. Like, I know that I have sometimes tried the screen caps of just the titles themselves in my videos, but I also provide the sources for where those titles are from down in the description box.
From Republicans that were like, nah. So what are you going to do?
Someone 1000, as Teal Deer would say, citation needed. Exactly.
Stop the count.
Okay.
This was great.
Oh, God. Okay. Stop the count. I will grant the benefit of the doubt. That was pretty babyish of Trump. What's this? Mr. Merchant was here at least a while ago. He was, says JC. And JC later says, or at least suiciding Epstein too early. Right.
Because a lot of people had fun with this. There was a lot of good vampire memes. I also threw into that as well. And then I went to actually tag Michael Bisping, but he actually already got to it himself because, you know, that's his nickname. He's the Count. And I thought that was a pretty good one. But it's just like, bro, stop the count. Like, what are you talking about, bro? I'm losing, so you have to stop. However, if he was throttling Biden, those words would never come out of his mouth. And that's obvious. And if you think that's not true, you're fucking lying to yourselves. I won.
Oh, God. Okay, I'm just going to grant that his overall point there is fair enough. Donald Trump would not be saying stop the count if there were still votes to be counted and he was winning against Biden. And he was being babyish, Trump was, for saying that people should stop the count. That's... You know, it's funny. Trump himself says stop the count, but a whole bunch of other right-wing pundits are saying every vote should be counted, or at least along them lines they were saying that rhetoric anyways.
This election by a lot. Man, people are just like, dude, stop. Stop it. This is embarrassing. Now I'm going to leave you guys with this. 2 old tweets from Trump. Vladimir Putin said today about Hillary and the Dems, in my opinion, it is humiliating. One must be able to lose with dignity. So true. What separates the winners from the losers is how a person reacts to each new twist of fate. Well, Trump.
Okay, that first tweet right there. Oh, God. Is there a real winner in election if there is fraud to be investigated, Derrick? That's the only question that I'll pose in response to that.
I really think you and your base need to take your own advice. So that's going to do it for this video, ladies and
was it, and I'm sorry that it took so long to actually get through that video. I kind of rambled a little bit too much, but nonetheless, let's go on to the next subject. So, as you all might have heard, okay, as you all might have been hearing from the mainstream news media, the average daily new coronavirus cases is rising. Oh god, I feel like I should do the finishing commentary. What I have to say is, I cannot wait until he makes that Twitter trash. I might do a response video to some black guy's Twitter trash talking about election fraud and whatnot, and the election results. But nonetheless, I have to say, just Derrick, get your head out of your ass. Biden is not Republican light. There is no exact equivalent between the reactions of 2016 and 2020, and there is no exact equivalent when it comes to claims of voter fraud and so forth. That's all I have to say. But anyway, moving on. So the mainstream news media, I have been getting notifications on my phone of articles being shared to me. This is actually one of those articles right here that was shared to me on my phone that I got a notification for anyways, about coronavirus cases hitting an all-time high or just skyrocketing or rising in general nonetheless. And I have to say, well, Sherlock, we are what is it, 8 months, 9 months even into knowing about coronavirus and handling coronavirus in our own land right now. Obviously, with that amount of time, we had at least better find a efficient way of testing for it. And also, it would go without saying that we would find a more efficient way, more advanced ways of trying to test for coronavirus. So as soon as that testing becomes more efficient, people are going to do more tests and possibly find more cases, whether that be mild or heavy cases of coronavirus. But I just got to say to myself, going off of that logic, the count doesn't really matter that much to me in the ultimatum of things. I mean, I could go on. You guys know about my opinion as to how I think there are some questions to be raised about the count of coronavirus cases and coronavirus deaths. I sort of doubt the exact numbers, but I'm not going to go on about that. You guys probably know my opinions. Just I would suggest watching some of my past episodes of Strike Force talking specifically about the coronavirus in regards of that. But for right now, I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt that the numbers are real. That said, it's been known for a while now that the coronavirus deaths, or at least weekly deaths, have been going down for a while. Here, let me refresh the page right here from the CDC website right here very quickly. So, unfortunately, we still do not have the most recent numbers. I mean, it's been over a week since the last time that the numbers have been released, which was November 7th. And the number of deaths within that week was only 1,143. Now, this is not to what's the word I'm looking for? This is not to downplay the deaths themselves. Obviously, nobody should be dying at all this disease right here. But is it really worth trying to damage our overall country and trying to take away our freedoms over this statistically small number? I have to highly doubt that. And because of the fact that the deaths themselves have been going down ever since the period of March through May, I just have to say that it doesn't mean a whole lot. But yet people are still trying to fearmonger and upplay this coronavirus pandemic. Did you see what Elon Musk said about his results? Red Feather says he said he took 4 tests in one day and 2 came back positive and 2 came back negative. Damn. Wow. That does raise some questions about the testing method here. Scarlet fever almost killed me, even with the vax, says Myth Cuttlefish. Damn. Sorry to hear that, Myth Cuttlefish. But nonetheless, it seems that people are trying to overplay this. And not to mention, looking at the numbers themselves, even if we were to put aside deaths for a moment, scrolling down here, the daily cases, and I've already pre-read this article. I got this link down in the description if you guys want to read it for yourself. But looking at the charts daily cases. There have been like two. Well, there have been one spike and then another spike, and then it seems that we are coming to our third spike. Look at the daily deaths. The first spike of daily deaths was significant. It's in the grand scheme of things, looking at the charts here anyways, it went from 0 to over 2,000 in the first spike. Then it went down again as far as daily deaths go, and the second spike, it was something over 1,000. And now it seems to be flattening out to just below 1,000. At least according to, says Johns Hopkins University. Okay. Daily cases, the daily deaths are not corroborating. Okay. What's the word I'm looking for? They're not parallel and flowing along with the daily cases. Like the first time, yeah, the ratio, the proportion of cases, the proportion of deaths were a lot closer to each other in the first spike of these two charts. But the second spike, look at it. It's a whole lot more disparate. You have all these new cases, and yet deaths by the raw number gone down. And if we were to like look at them as a percentage, even if we were to like take into account every single case as being severe or whatever for the second spike here, this would mean that we are becoming more resistant or resilient rather to the coronavirus overall. So we are starting to like biologically adapt to this. If the ratio of people like dying for every case that people get, or that a group of people get, it's things are starting to look overall on the up and up. Yet here we are with more fear mongering and the current hospitalizations. Just look at that. Hospitalizations, the first spike and the second spike are about the same amount. As you could say, it says 60K. The first spike, okay. In the daily cases, the first spike was pretty low. The second spike was even higher. But the two spikes of the current hospitalizations were about the same. So again, it seems that the ratios, that the rates between both of these two data points are starting to look more disparate. And if I was to give the benefit of the doubt that cases are skyrocketing, as CNBC has been claims in this article right here, then that would mean that overall we're becoming resistant to it. So let's just go back to our normal day-to-day life. But to sort of showcase the fear-mongering that's going on, here's an article, or a video rather, from NBC News talking about states issue new COVID-19 restrictions as virus surges. And the ratio right there, as you can see, I kind of contributed.
More states reaching breakpoints as a coronavirus pandemic hits new highs. The U.S. reported more than 100,000 daily cases for the last 10 days.
Wait.
Announced 100,000 daily cases.
Oh, daily.
More states reaching breaking points as a coronavirus pandemic hits new highs. The U.S. reported more than 100,000 daily cases for the last 10 days.
Okay, it says daily cases, people just catching the Wu flu in general, not deaths. Sorry, I was a little bit misunderstanding on that. The test itself is sus, says Myth Cuttlefish, right? I heard there's a case in Port Adelaide. Great, now I'm gonna get even more germophobic, says Cat Chat. Yeah, that's unfortunate, Cat, because I'm not so much concerned about catching the virus itself, or I'm highly doubtful that I'll die of it or anything like that. I'm just concerned that if I was to catch it, the legal repercussions, because even if there isn't significant physical immunity, or if there isn't like significant physical biological repercussions towards a person like catching this virus or being exposed to it, there's still at least legal repercussions, it seems, or social stigma repercussions if one was to catch it.
Oregon and New Mexico announcing a partial lockdown, urging residents to stay
Also, cases is not the same as deaths, as Myth cuttlefish. I did the same mistake myself. I think I might have accidentally called Myth cuttlefish Milfed cuttlefish. My bad, cuttlefish. Oh god. Someone says, "I don't get me wrong. I'm not against vaccines. I'm just against fully relying on them." Right?
home for 2 weeks.
We don't act right.
Okay, we are at the breaking point. COVID-19 hospitalizations have risen at least 214% over the last month. I kind of have to doubt that. Okay, as of October 25th. Now, today is November 15th, so that's like about 20 days ago, 2021, something like that. This article was released October 6th. 2020. I don't know. I don't know. At first, I was kind of doubtful of that 114% figure. I guess for right now, I'll just bite my tongue on that. New Mexico recorded 182 COVID-19 deaths over the last 2 weeks. The 2 weeks prior, the state recorded 75. That's an increase of 143%. How come I have to press X to doubt on that? I mean, it's mainstream news media. I don't exactly trust you guys because the thing with the mainstream news media, they do not provide their citations for where they're getting their information. They just have the bullet points of where that they supposedly read it or even completely made up this themselves. And they just expect you to be into it hook, line, and sinker. It's a problem with mainstream news media these days.
Now, we cannot.
We face a life or death situation, and we must and will act to preserve the lives of New Mexicans. How about preserving the liberty? Is that at all a concern of yours?
2 weeks.
If we don't act right now, we cannot preserve the lives, can't keep saving lives.
In North Dakota, after months of resistance, the governor now mandating masks following another day of rare infections.
That's scary. I mean, I don't know the exact details, but I've been only hearing good things about the North Dakota governor, about how he was being fairly pro-liberty in his handling, or I guess handling, I'll put air quotes to that, handling of the coronavirus pandemic. But now he is sort of starting to buckle towards the pressure of the authoritarians and mandating masks in the same way that Laura Kelly has here in Kansas. Sad. We are starting to lose here, folks, it seems like.
And hospitalizations.
Our situation has changed, and we must change with it.
In Nevada, where daily cases also surged to record levels, the governor announced he's tested positive for the virus. Idaho is rolling back its reopening, limiting indoor and outdoor gatherings, and mobilizing the National Guard to help overwhelmed hospitals. In Chicago, residents are being told to leave their homes essential needs only starting Monday. The advisory lasting at least 30 days.
I'm going to just hold my skepticism until I see actual numbers from other websites, CDC or anyone or anything else like that. And even they might not be 110% reliable, but nonetheless, I still have a little bit more trust towards the CDC, just a little bit more than freaking NBC. And what citations they do use is usually their own articles or tweets from Twitter, says Mr. Merchant. Right? Myth Cuttlefish says, TJE Media is just like GIV. We're from the government and we're here to help. Okay. Not to mention that Red Feather says, Trump is older and he got it and is fine. Granted, he had access to the best medical care. Sent 1000 also says, not to mention that he took care of himself his whole life. I don't know. He's still kind of fat. Let's be honest.
And in New York, Governor Cuomo is clamping down now.
Well, Cuomo, that's not exactly any surprises right there.
even with one of the lowest virus spread in the country.
We believe we're going to have to be taking additional steps.
This weekend, he's joining Northeast governors for an emergency summit.
Even if my state shuts down again, it says Myth Cofish, I'm not stopping Christmas. Nasha Buena and Christmas. Fuck that. Okay, yeah. Neither am I, or is my family. Living here in good old Wichita, Kansas. JC Armstrong says, or they just use anonymous sources, right? Says, well, I'm going to go watch a silly stream. I'll put the link in Discord. Bye, everyone. Take care. See you later, Red Feather. Thanks for tuning in.
After ordering bars, restaurants, and gyms to shut down for a 10 p.m. curfew. The new rules prompting fear.
The future, it's very...
Yeah, fear. That's a key word here, folks. They are fear is what they are. Rather questionable, if not outright baseless fear.
disconcerting, to be honest.
And frustration.
Small businesses, they've already been affected. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly.
The U.S. has averaged 1,000 deaths every day this month.
All right. Again, bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that. That's the main thing that I'm calling bullshit. Let me refresh the CDC website here one more time, see if they came with the updated numbers. But look at this, folks. You cannot see it very well. Actually, let me do a single display. So I don't know if you can see it very well, but look at this. For the last 3 periods of us getting data from the CDC as far as all deaths involving COVID-19, as you can see right there, the highest point that it ever was the end period of April 18th, 2020 of the year. Well, that's kind of redundant. April 18th of this year, it was 17,000, and it went down to the 4,000s and 3,000s within the last 2 months, roughly. But looking at this more closely, October 24th of this year, 4,641. October 31st, 2020. And by the way, look at this right here. Table 1, deaths involving coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, pneumonia, and influenza reported to NCH. By week ending date, United States, week ending February 1st, 2020, November 7th, 2020. So basically these dates here are the ending of the week period. So in between the time of October 31st in 2020 to the time of November 7th, 2020, there was only about 1,143 deaths. And in the period between October 24th, 2020 and ending October 31st, 2020, there have only been 3,644 deaths total. And they're saying, okay, let me pull it up again. 1,000 COVID-19 deaths every day this month. So this month being November, because this is a very recent release right here, November 14th, 2020. I mean, if there was 1,000 COVID-19 deaths every day, wouldn't this number right here for the first week of November be a whole lot higher than 1,000? I mean, it would have to be at least at 6,000 or 7,000 for it to be 1,000 daily cases. This is absolute bullshit. They're just bullshitting us right here, folks. As far as the fear that they are peddling right now, the mainstream media and so forth, in order to justify all this authoritarianism. At the beginning of all this news about coronavirus, I was somewhat sympathetic or empathetic about the idea of locking down everything and the pessimisms of regards of coronavirus. But with all the more and more denial of with the more that people deny the freedoms that are being taken away and the more that people advocate for taking freedoms away, with the lockdowns, mask mandates, shutting down businesses, etc. It just made me more and more passionately anti-lockdown and more not so pessimistic about the virus itself even. I mean, forget about the liberties aspect of this. I've been becoming more and more optimistic, it seems, about the virus itself. that it's just being overplayed. 0.02% mortality rate, says JC Armitage. Yeah, that's what people are sacrificing what little liberty they have over. Exactly. This is unbelievable right here. And again, going back to the CNBC article that we had read right here, cases are skyrocketing. Like, it's been generally claimed and researched that the case fatality rate of this disease is 2%. And if it was like 2% from the very beginning in the early days of this virus being spread around here in the US, and we're just now seeing a skyrocket of it, but the deaths are not exactly following along with the skyrocket of cases, well, then it seems that survivability rate, the survivability rate being 98% since the case fatality rate is 2%, it seems that the survivability rate is, you could almost argue a case, the survivability rate is going further up because the death and case rate are becoming more and more separate from each other. There's becoming a bigger difference between the two numbers. And yet this is what we are like starting to sacrifice more and more of our liberties of, starting to ramp up, reinstituting the lockdowns like we're back in March or April. Bullshit.
The city of El Paso now using mobile morgues to hold the dead.
So it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And then I don't know how far along.
No, you're just saying that it's getting worse. And as far as those mobile morgues go, I don't know. I'm not going to say outright that it's debunked bullcrap because I do not know the evidence in regards to that. But I don't know.
Until we do something drastically.
But coronavirus survivors offer light during these dark days. Patty Riddle is COVID-free after 35 days in a coma.
We're working on stair steps now, but yeah, I'm supposed to be released here by the 24th.
Just in time for Thanksgiving, a holiday holding new meaning this year.
And Kathy joins us now. Kathy, New York City schools, the largest in the nation, on the brink of shutting down again.
Jose, that's right. If the positivity rate reaches 3%, that means all goes remote. And today the number reached 2.47%. So the mayor warns that closures could happen as soon as Monday. Jose?
Kathy Park in New York. Thank you. NBC News.
All right. That's it. Oh, there's Lester Holt right there. Guy who moderated the first presidential debate of 2016. Yeah, for all this fear peddling that's going on, I just have to press a big fat X to doubt on that one. And again, as the test becomes more and more efficient, of course there's going to be a rise in the amount of cases. But I'm just going to say it right now. The cases themselves, the contraction itself, does not mean that much livelihood of people. I mean, I'm not going to say that coronavirus is exactly like the common flu, the common seasonal flu or anything like that. But people get sick all the time. Just because a person gets sick, that does not in of itself mean a tragedy. A death is a tragedy, yes. But how big a tragedy is it right now? Right now, relatively speaking to the early days of the coronavirus, as far as death goes, it's not as big of a tragedy as it was once before. Even back then, I would say it wasn't worth shutting down our entire economy and possibly putting us in a recession or even depression. But nowadays, I would say even more so. It's absolutely not worth crippling ourselves. And yet that's what people are starting to advocate for again. Anyway, I think I am done with that a little subject right there. So we're going to just go on to something a little bit more lighthearted, just mildly anyways. So this is is there a date right here? It says Friday, 12:15 p.m. Does it mean like this last Friday? Maybe. I don't know exactly. But so anybody like remember the old Skeptosphere days, the 11, 13, 20 yeah, it might be this year. But it's sort of a bit of a reflection back on the good old days of the skeptic community versus SJWs, the old anti-SJW days. We're going to read this article just for shits and giggles. Miles Morales reforms Spider-Man's relationship with the police when it needs to be abolished. Excuse me. So what exactly are you meaning? I mean that the police should be abolished in the Spider-Man universe. There should not be police existing at all in the Spider-Man universe? Or are you saying that the relationship itself shouldn't exist? Get more into this. It's the blog post. Insomniac's Spider-Man Miles Morales follows the fledgling webhead as he steps out from under Peter Parker's shadow. He's defending New York City on his own for the first time, just as a bitter ground war breaks out between the nefarious Roxxon Corporation and the tech-powered underground movement. New as Miles is to this life, fighting crime is his calling, and he's ready to step up to the plate. Now, a little bit of backstory. This article was actually shared to me by, not shared to me specifically, but it was shared on Twitter by Micah Curtis, and he was saying, there is no satisfying the woke, no matter how woke you go. Something along those lines. But it was just a ridiculous article just going by the title itself. Is it really something worth bitching about? Oh, you're going to reflect a good relationship between the superhero which your comic focuses around, this in case being Spider-Man. You're going to make his relationship with the police be a good thing, or you're going to look at that and say that's something worth bitching about? Come on, get out of here. As the conflict spills out of Harlem into other neighborhoods, Miles realizes that he has to intervene because New York City is conveniently out of superheroes all of a sudden. Not to mention the NYPD's deeply unprepared to go to toe with either the Underground or Roxxon's trigger-happy commandos. By placing its hero at the center of an ongoing battle between two warring factions, Miles Morales follows in its predecessor's narrative footsteps and plays into the idea of Spider-Man, regardless of whether it's Peter or Miles under the mask, always being pulled in different directions. Where Peter's game framed the ground-level police as his, at times, unwitting allies, Miles Morales goes out of its way to draw as much attention away from them as possible. It often feels as if the game's creative team understood that a story about an Afro-Puerto Rican teenager teaming up with New York cops would strike the wrong tone, especially in a year that's been defined by protests calling for police reform and abolition. So, what are you trying to say? Are you saying that the comic should be more pessimistic with their narrative? Instead of the comic calling for unity between police officer and citizen, which Miles Morales basically is, he's a vigilante, but nonetheless a citizen, interacting in good terms with the cops. Instead of having good relationships between them to sort of bring light, sort of lighten up people's moods in this tenuous year, they should actually play along with the isms. They're just going to be pouring gasoline into the fire and making things worse as far as people's attitudes go this year. Oh man, I don't even know how exactly to respond to this. This is just utterly stupid right here. What is wrong with a comic trying to relieve people's pessimisms and whatnot of trying to cool down relationships between within a society by posting a comic that reflects a more positive outlook, especially in a year that's been defined by protests calling for police reform and abolition in response to the kind of institutional police brutality that's left countless innocent unarmed black and brown people murdered by law enforcement. Countless. Yeah, because a few hundred per year is absolutely countless. That's not to downplay the actual deaths themselves. They shouldn't happen. Most of them, actually, all the innocent people that get shot by police should not happen at all. But saying that's countless, that's just a little bit hyperbolic on your part. But the more you play the new game, the more you see that its attempt to acknowledge our real-world only goes but so far. Ultimately, the game doesn't have the courage or desire to be honest about the way things are. God. Like, okay, maybe it would be better if the game like created some dirty cop character, but if the game, okay, so I guess this isn't a comic. This is actually a video game based off of the Miles Morales Spider-Man. If the game is going to have some good guy cop, you're going to say that that's a bad thing. Are you doing nothing but just looking at bad examples of bad cops? You're not even looking at the examples of a cop shooting an actual bad guy. You're just looking at them shooting actual innocent people. Yeah. You need to take yoga. You need to just learn how to get a little bit more of a positive outlook on life. Just a little bit. No one in the chat says, it amazes me how people on the left quickly forget the advice that Hillary Clinton gave to Joe Biden. She never conceded the election, and now they're bitching that Trump is doing the same. Oh, she didn't? Huh. I'm not so sure. I don't know no one. No one is literally the name of the guy in the life, by the way. So, what the evidence of that? No, I never heard of Clinton refusing to concede the election. American Dreamer MAGA Man in the live chat says CNN is going broke. I don't know specifically on that. I'll just give you the benefit of the doubt. In Insomniac's first Spider-Man game, Peter spends a considerable amount of the core campaign assisting the NYPD in their fight to take down both Wilson Fisk and Martin Lee, while also dealing with trigger-happy Sable International commandos and escapees from the raft. Oh yeah, because Miles Morales is trying to stop crime, whether or not that police are trying to help him or he's trying to help them in stopping that crime is such a bad thing. Ugh. Good Lord, shut the fuck up. Were it not for Peter's efforts, New York's cops would be utterly overwhelmed by the superpowered threats facing their city. But Peter, the self-proclaimed spider cop, is all too eager to help out the boys. Should he not? I mean, I don't know the exact details of the game, but in superhero franchises, you have the superhero constantly trying to stop bad guys from kidnapping, even killing, and robbing people. And you're going to act like that's a bad thing just because their goal is the same as the cops within that comic book, within that franchise? You need to stop. Oh, God. I have no words for that. That is stupid. That is just some... You're being so fucking narrow-minded right now. Get the blinders off. Stop getting tunnel vision. You're just so focused. You're so freaking focused on your hatred for cops to where that you're going to act like as if Peter trying to stop the same thing that the cops are also trying to stop is a bad thing. What the fuck? He ultimately sees his vigilantism as an extension of the law and order and police purport to represent. Yeah! He's stopping perpetrators of robbery and so forth. That's a good thing. Even after you beat the first Spider-Man's core campaign, as you play through the post-game searching for all the holdouts from Lee's inner demon gang who continue the organization's operations, even though their leader has been in prison, Peter uses messages intercepted from a police scanner to keep abreast of him. Oh yeah, he's using police equipment to try and help him in his vigilante justice and his stopping of crime. Oh, it's so terrible. The NYPD might not exactly know that Spider-Man's working with them to rid the city of evil, but the game makes it impossible to misunderstand that Peter sees the police as an invaluable tool in his web-slinging arsenal. God. This is ridiculous. But this is why I decided to read this, folks, for the lulls and the outrage. Very early into Miles Morales, after Peters left New York to tag along with Mary Jane on a reporting trip, Miles comes face to face with both Roxxon and the Underground. The two gangs square off on the high bridge, and Panic desperately try to escape the collapsing structure. As Miles webs his way around the crumbling structure, taking out armed goons and scooping up imperiled people before they plunge to their deaths. It becomes clear that Roxxon and the Underground are willing to bring the city to ruin in order to accomplish their goals. The game's opening act features a moment in which Miles, with his hands up, stands between a Roxxon soldier and an armed member of the Underground. The entire scene evokes the image of civilians imploring deadly authority figures to lower their weapons rather than immediately leading with violence. The game attempts to equate Roxxon and the Underground's methods with the type of brazen brutality that's cultivated within American police forces. Wait, what the fuck? The game attempts to equate Roxxon and the Underground. Let's keep this in mind. Those are two criminal organizations that I guess that the game is portraying. Methods with the type of... The game attempts to equate Roxxon and the Underground's methods with the type of brazen brutality that's cultivated within American police forces. But on top of that, the story asserts that both groups are the ultimate enemy of the good. How otherwise could they be seen as good guys? Oh, God. Are you going to actually substantiate that? Like, I've seen theories, Star Wars theories about how the Galactic Empire in Star Wars is ultimately are actually the good guys. Like, I don't buy into those theories myself, but even they have a little bit more of an argument as to how the Empire is actually the good guys than what you're presenting here as to how these two criminal organizations are good guys. Aren't they criminals, the two organizations, says Cat Chat? It seems like it, yet they are acting like it's a bad thing that Miles and the police are trying to stop these. Like Peter, Miles comes to use technology to guide him in his crime-fighting exploits. But unlike Peter, rather than piggybacking on the police's infrastructure, is on Gank Lee's friendly neighborhood spider app. Okay. It's something people across the city already use to report suspicious activity they witness, and is essentially a riff on Nextdoor, a platform that's been plagued by issues concerning racial profiling. Oh, God. Maybe the comic wanted to portray a perfected version of Riff within their universe. I don't know, to sort of give an idealistic view or version within their fantasy realm. Use of the tech represents Miles' growing connection to Harlem and the game's attempt at imagining a world where policing is fundamentally driven by the community itself rather than the police. Behind that attempt, though, you can plainly see Insect's desire to distance itself from the overt optics of Spider-Man using police tech to help them. But the game never makes any attempt to acknowledging why these optics are bad. What? Let me reread that. Behind that attempt, though, you can plainly see Insomniac's desire to distance itself from the overt optics of Spider-Man using police tech to help them, but the game never manages any attempt to acknowledge why those optics are bad. Why? Because they don't exactly reflect on reality? Are you seriously going to act like that police act 110% in the wrong? I mean, maybe it'd be best and more thought-provoking if a game was to include bad cops as well as good cops instead of just good cops. But nonetheless, oh, God, it's a big old nothing burger. Cops are very much a part of Miles Morales' world, even beyond his late father, Jefferson, an officer who died in the line of duty during the events of the first game. Look particularly hard to spot them patrolling the streets or popping up in action-packed cutscenes where it's obvious they're out of their depth. The police are there on the sidelines as this all-new, all-different Spider-Man single-handedly rallies to save the city from destruction. This time, though, they're presented as an inert, mostly unengaged presence that interacts with reality far less than the game's NPCs. Miles Morales' world isn't meant to be a direct reflection of our world. You kind of shoot yourself in the foot with that right there. You admit that Miles Morales' Spider-Man right here is not meant to be a direct reflection or an exact reflection of our modern world. So why are you complaining about it not being realistic enough? I mean, if it was attempting to be a reflection of our world, let me just finish the sentence. Miles Morales' world isn't meant to be a direct reflection of our world and the societal ills that plague it. But at the same time, you can hear and see the writing team trying to acknowledge ideas and conversations about social justice. Oh, God. What is your point right there? It just almost seems like a big word salad, almost. Like, if you're going to acknowledge that the game is not meant to be realistic, then why are you bitching about it not being realistic enough? That comes out in elements like Danica Hart's podcast, which periodically cuts in while you swing through Manhattan. The problem is that while characters like Danica pay lip service to the ideas of resisting authoritarian rule and rallying against mega corporations, ideas that, again, resonate in this particular moment, Miles Morales aims little to none of that energy at the police themselves. Wait, what? The problem is that while characters like Danica pay lip service to the ideas of resisting authoritarian rule and rallying against mega corporations, ideas that, again, resonate in this particular moment, Miles Morales aims little to none of that energy at the police themselves. So your problem is that Miles Morales is not trying to deal with the bad cops himself, is not trying to be a vigilante against police as well against common criminals. Maybe you have a little bit of a fair point right there, but nonetheless, it's not like that you just admitted it yourself, that the game is not completely ignoring that there are bad cops out there. They're just not making it the main focus out there. I mean, what the heck? I like Miles from the movie. He's my favorite Spider-Man overall, says Cat Chat. Okay. I personally, I don't know. I'll have to do a review probably sometime of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because I thought this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I thought that it was a little bit overrated. Like, it wasn't outright bad. It's just that all the side characters, like all the different types of Spider-Man from all the different parallel universes, they did not develop those characters enough. They were like given quick backstories, quick flashbacks of their backstory, and that's it. And that's all you get to know about them. That's it. It's just kind of disappointing. I would have liked, and there's not a whole lot of banter between the different types of Spider-Man. So it ain't that fun to look at these characters engage one another when they're not bantering with one another. No one in the chat says, I think no one might be looking at a past point of this live stream because he's to be on old subjects. I know that this is a little off topic, but the Daily Mail just reported that a Joe Biden charity that raised millions of dollars for cancer research paid zero in cancer research. Oh, okay. Interesting. You can provide the link in the live chat if you like to, no one, and I'll consider giving it a read. This makes the story feel decidedly out of touch, especially in moments when the game alludes to Harlem being targeted specifically by Roxanne's dangerous new energy source because of its black, brown, and working class population. What? What the fuck does this have to do? This makes the story feel decidedly out of touch. I don't see it as being out of touch. Maybe Miles just decides for himself that he doesn't want to get involved in police business. Yeah, maybe Miles would be a little bit more virtuous if he was to go out of his way to stop the bad cops. But nonetheless, because the game seemingly acknowledges that there are bad cops, how is it out of touch? Just because it does not have you as the protagonist, playing as the protagonist in order to stop bad cops, doesn't mean that it is completely out of touch. It's just not creating the objectives within the game to do that sort of thing. Especially in moments when the game alludes to Harlem being targeted specifically by Roxanne's dangerous new energy source because of its black, brown, and working class population. What? How the fuck is that out of touch? I mean, it's a fantasy element of the game. Roxanne is a completely fantastical organization. It's completely made up. Of course it's going to be out of touch with reality because it's fantasy. God. At the same time that the story eschews or however you pronounce that word, at the same time that the story eschews making petty drug busts in favor of stopping armed dealers from selling guns in Central Park, well, maybe Miles Morales is pro-gun rights. Maybe the reason why he doesn't deal with arms dealers is because he believes that New York should be less stringent on gun control. You're just making me like Miles Morales as Spider-Man a little bit more in that facet of things. Now, yeah, I don't think he should be stopping drug dealership at the same time as arms dealers, but all the same. Okay, let me rewind that or restart that. At the same time that the story eschews making a petty drug busts in favor of stopping arms dealers from selling guns in Central Park, it largely sidesteps making mention of how the police historically existed as organizations harboring the very same kind of domestic terrorists Miles Morales wanted to take down with well-timed venom blasts. Oh, God. Again, with the claim of the police being terrorists. Like, what is the technical political motivation of the police officers? I mean, I don't know. It'd be a little bit of a topic that I have to think of my response a little bit in further some later date. But nonetheless, we're just going to continue on right now because it's getting kind of late and I have other things that I wanted to do today. To Miles Morales' credit, it does feature a prominent Black Lives Matter mural down in the financial district, as well as an unlockable black and yellow Uptown Pride costume. But the Uptown Pride suits long side quests that aren't integral to the game's main plot. And there's something about Miles donning the suit without the game directly engaging with the ideas that BLM stands for that makes the gesture feel somewhat hollow. What? And there's something about Miles donning the suit without the game directly engaging with the ideas BLM stands for that makes the gesture feel somewhat hollow. I mean, what? What the fuck? Is Miles Morales supposed to ally himself up with Black Lives Matter in order to be fighting crime? I mean, that hurt my head right there. What does he have to say? Does he have to say Black Lives Matter every single time that he goes punching a robber in the face in the game? Black Lives Matter. Or some attempted rapist? Black Lives Matter. And so on and so forth. This is stupid. What? Oh my gosh. What are they? That hurt my head. That was such a stupid ass word salad that I'm having a hard time of conceiving as to how stupid it is. Miles is the black Latinx Latino, might I correct you. Miles is the black Latino son of a slain cop and an aspiring local politician whose entire campaign revolved around making Harlem a stronger, safer community for its residents. Despite the lack of support and resources it's historically been afforded. Miles is also a justice-minded vigilante who knows that he can do what the cops can't and won't. Everything about who Miles is as a hero makes it difficult to sit with the idea that he wouldn't have a more complicated and at times negative relationship with the police than Parker does. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, if he's like going around fighting crime as Spider-Man and doesn't ever reveal his face, the police are not going to know his face, his skin color. I mean, maybe they can make out an ethnicity by listening to his voice very closely. But what if the police don't have the time to pay attention to that and think, oh, there's a black guy that we hear underneath that suit. Maybe we should go after him. You know, start racially profiling Spider-Man. What the fuck? And if he is like fighting the very criminals that the police are also trying to stop, of course they are not going to go directly after Spider-Man at that point. Let me restart that. Everything about who Miles is as a hero makes it difficult to sit with the idea that he wouldn't have a more complicated and at times negative relationship with the police than Peter does, owing to their vastly different cultural experiences. Oh, brother. I mean, it's not like the police officers have never worked with black people before. I mean, again, take a look at his dad. Like Cat Chat says in the chat here, his dad is a police officer. Him supporting BLM makes no sense. Well, whether or not he supports BLM is whether it makes no sense on whether or not he should or should not support BLM. But yeah, like Cat Chat says here, his dad is a police officer, so it's not like the NYPD has not worked with black people before. So if you got some vigilante who is stopping the same criminals that they are, of course they're going to be grateful of that, at least somewhat grateful. With Miles Morales, Insomniacs crafted a more than solid first outing for New York's newest Spider-Man that makes the prospect of future games an interesting one. But if the game studio really wants its next generation take on New York City's finest web slingers to feel like dynamic, engaged people at the center of stories worth diving into, it's going to have to do a better job of addressing the way things actually are rather than how we want them to be. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the point as to why that they portray things the way that people want them to be is because ultimately they're trying to lighten up people's moods. Have you ever thought about that guy, Mr. Charles Pulliam Moore? Have you ever thought about the reason why that they reflect the world as we want them to is for it to be an escape from the pessimisms and the negativity of the world. So they make the police look like these virtuous guys to, calm people down while they play their gaming experience. Rather than have them not only like throwing the controller across the room because they lost the game, but also throwing the controller across the room because, oh, I'm actively thinking about race relations right now in regards to the police. I don't know. It's just utterly dumb and petty. Like, yeah, I'm not going to say that if you want a little bit more of a realistic view on games, I'm not going to say that it's an outright bad thing. I mean, I can probably go pointing out at some certain franchises that don't reflect reality well enough. But all the same, is it really worth saying that it's problematic? That it's somehow immoral or sinful or to your own political beliefs or whatever? I don't know. I think that's all that I got to say about this article, all I have to say today, and I'm going to move on with my day because I have an Overwatch game to catch up with some friends right now. But anyway, hopefully next time that I go live streaming, I will have OBS corrected so that I can do my new introduction gaming footage thing, whatever. Anyway, hope to see y'all later. Stay safe out there. Good night and God bless.